the day before and told him that I needed to switch that. And he handled it with such grace and didn't make me feel too bad. It was a genuine emergency. And I think that's a testament to his care, but also his level of thoroughness. So one more round of applause for Michael. And I also want to give it up for Maria, who, in lieu of me not being able to be here yesterday, switched spots with me. And this is the closing speech for this conference, a time that should be held for your intrepid leader, and she gracefully gave that up, and so that's not lost on me, so please give it up for Maria. So as I said, this is my hometown, and I want to tell you all a little bit about myself, and then I'll end it off hopefully on a high note, and then I'll get out of your way, let you get to workshops and knocking on some doors. I'm the oldest son of a preacher and a teacher. I have 3 younger brothers, and we grew up on the south side of Chicago, as I said, a neighborhood called West Englewood. Many of you all may have heard of it. I don't know how many of you all have been there, but this is a neighborhood that has been completely abandoned and then taken over by capital. It is a neighborhood that didn't have quality services, a grocery store, a library. This is a neighborhood that some people have called the murder capital of the city of Chicago. This is the neighborhood that raised me, that I was born in. This is the neighborhood that I went to elementary school in, walked 3 blocks to the school that my mom worked in, went to Beasley Elementary School, and then was lucky enough to test into Whitney Young High School. This was a neighborhood that raised me, and so I wouldn't be here without West Englewood. From a very young age, I always wanted to not be poor. We were poor. We were 4 little nappy-headed boys who destroyed every store that we went into. My father and my mother worked very, very hard to put food on the table. My mother is and was the smartest woman that I've ever met. She graduated with her master's degree in mathematics when I was 14 years old from Chicago State University. So my mother, having raised 4 boys, was still able to educate herself to the standard of this country and receive a master's in mathematics. My mother was the smartest and is the hardest working woman that I know. She currently drives, my mother currently drives Uber and Lyft and is a cashier. A black woman with a master's degree is currently providing for herself, driving Uber and Lyft.
That ain't right.
And working as a cashier. My father is the smartest man that I know. He didn't graduate from college. He was the most well-read and learned man that I know. When I was in 3rd grade, my father was on Jeopardy. And he bet it all on the daily Jeopardy, on the double Jeopardy, and lost.
Aww.
My father was a gambling man. Things would have been quite different had he had gotten that answer right. I might not have been a part of the proletariat revolution if my father had gotten. I don't know if class suicide would have been in me, you know, if my dad had won that Jeopardy, but my father did not. But my father is and was the smartest man that I ever have known. My father has had a number of heart attacks and isn't in great health and can't afford the health care that he needs. But my father and my mother did everything they could to put food on our table. From a very young age, I did not want to be poor. I grew up in church. So every day, it seems, 8 days a week, 25 hours a day, my family will be in church praising and tithing to God. And I remember as a young age, I remember reading the Word and reading the Scripture and realizing that my mother and father did everything that it said do in the Bible, but we still couldn't seem to make ends meet. Still couldn't seem to live like other people live. Still couldn't seem to have what everybody else had. And I grew inside myself. I became ashamed of who I was, ashamed of where I was from. I never invited friends over to my house because I didn't want nobody to see where I was living. I didn't want anybody to see how I was living, and so I became insecure and very shy about myself. I didn't want to be poor. And so I did everything I could at a young age to make some money. It was me and my younger brothers, and so we raked leaves, we shoveled We snowed, we cleaned cars, we sold comic books, we did everything that we could to make money. And so my goal from a young age was I didn't want to be poor. I begun to play music, and so as a musician I began to make a little bit of money. And I don't know how many of you all know about the black church, but musicians do very well playing at black churches. I don't know if y'all know. It's a little bit different, and for the black church, God paid in cash. And so I was feeling very blessed to be where I was. And by the time I was in high school, I was playing drums for St. Mark United Methodist Church on the south side. And I was making a little bit of money. And I decided I wasn't going to college. There wasn't no need to go to college because I was already beginning to make money. And after my senior year of high school, I remember being in church and they brought all of the young people up to the front, and each senior said what school that they would be going to, and they rattled off the names of schools, and I was sitting on the drums, and I remember them looking at me and saying, "Philip, you graduated, where are you going to college?" And I said, "You know, I'm not. Y'all are paying me very well. I think I've reached a pinnacle here, and I don't want to mess this thing up." And they said, "No, you've got to go to school. You've got to go to college. Where did you apply?" And I told them I had applied to University of Illinois. Told them I had applied to Southern. And like, "Oh, that's a party school." And I told them that I had applied to Florida A&M University, and they said, "You're going there." And I didn't know it, but we had some Florida A&M University students that were in that school, and they were in that church, and they raised some money for me. And they sent me to college. I drove and packed up a minivan with this money that they raised for me, and I drove down to Florida A&M. I had never visited the school. I didn't know what it looked like. I didn't know really where I was going. I thought Tallahassee looked just like Miami. It does not. I thought all HBCUs was like an episode of A Different World or like Drumline. It is not. It's better. But I went to this school sight unseen. I didn't know where I was. I didn't know when. It was a huge culture shock for me. I had never really left out of Chicago. I know that sounds crazy for you all. You all go to conferences all over the country, but I had rarely left the city of Chicago on maybe 2 or 3 occasions, and this was a huge culture shock for me. Of course, I'm amongst all black people, but y'all might not know this, but all black people are not the same. And so when I went down there, I saw black people speaking in different accents and different languages. And you know, cool guys in Chicago, we don't really dance. We just stand there, and they were dancing, and they were really active when they were dancing. I said, I'm not going to be able to survive here. And I was nervous. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to go. I had no, you know, my family didn't have a tradition of going to college. I didn't know what fraternities were, what sororities were. I knew nothing. I don't know about you all, but I was wholly ignorant about what college was about. But I threw myself into college. I said I wasn't valedictorian when I was in college. I wasn't heavily involved, and I wanted to make my parents proud, and I wanted to reinvigorate or reinvent myself and become something wholly different. And I went, and I remember I saw the student body president speaking on stage during freshman welcome week, and it was a young man named Larry Rivers, and this guy was amazing. He was in college. He was only, you know, when you're in college, somebody that's 2 years older than you seems like they're like 30 years older than you. Yeah. He actually really lived up to that. He was about 2 years older than me, but let me tell you all about Larry Rivers. Larry Rivers, while in college, had written a book on the history of our school that was used at the school. Damn. That's what kind of person was speaking to me during my freshman week. Larry O. Rivers, I'll never forget it. I looked at my mom and said, I'm going to do that. And she said, well, you know, shoot for the stars. You know, shoot for the moon, you'll land amongst the stars. We just want you to not flunk out. I said, no, I want to do that. And so I immediately got into student government. No one told me, no one thought I would win. I didn't know what I was doing. I handed out roses in the cab. I sang to people, I did whatever. And I wound up freshman class president. I didn't really have a platform, but I just knew I wanted, you know, radical change on campus and cable in the dorms, and so I promised all manner of things, and I was freshman class president. I continued to throw myself into everything that I could. I got more involved. I felt my confidence swelling. I felt like I could do anything. My sophomore year came around, and I ran for sophomore class president unopposed. I had silenced all challengers to my regime. Okay? Nobody wanted to run against me. Okay, by sophomore year, I had a little fiefdom, okay? I completely reinvented myself. I also joined a fraternity. I joined the first African-American fraternity on a college campus, Alpha Phi Alpha, where Martin Luther King, Thurgood Marshall had come through our ranks, and I joined this fraternity. In a matter of 2 years, I had completely become something dramatically different. I was once a small fish in a big pond, and now I was a huge shark in a little puddle. You know, no, I could not be stopped. I was the most popular person on campus. I could move about wherever I wanted. Florida State University is also in Tallahassee, and people thought I was a student body president at Florida State University. I was very active in the city of Tallahassee. I was well known. During my election, I decided to wrap a bus with my face and also get a billboard. I understood. All these stories are true. Sad. Very sadly, but when you first came to campus, you saw my face emblazoned on the front billboard of the campus. Everyone knew me. I was the person to know. My political career was unstoppable. After my sophomore year, I got a call from a mentor of mine. He was a former student body president many years before at Florida A&M University. He was also a member of my fraternity. He was a big-time lawyer in the city. He had a black card. Whenever he hosted events at his office, they were huge happy hours. All the fraternity brothers would come, and we would have a great time. We would regale in the small successes of being in a fraternity in Tallahassee, Florida, and nothing could stop us. And so one day, during the summer after my sophomore year, this attorney gave me a call. He said, "Philip, I want you to come to my office." And I thought he was having one of his amazing happy hours that he has. And so when Daryl Park says come to his office at 5 o'clock p.m., I'm there at 4:30. I want him to know I'm committed. And so I'm there at 4:30 when he gets there, and he comes and he opens up, and there are other people that I recognize from other campuses, from Florida State, from Tallahassee Community College, and I'm going around being the campaigner that I am. I'm shaking people's hands. I'm welcoming them to my happy hour that I'm hosting. I'm letting them know that they're very welcome here. I can't wait. What are you drinking? What are you drinking? I know what I'm drinking. I've already started. You know, this is a great summer event. The beginning of my summer after I've joined a fraternity and become student body vice president. And so we all sit down in a circle. We're all around the table, and we're sitting, and we're just waiting for this grand party to commence. And he comes in, and I'm talking, and Daryl Park says, "Philip, sit down." I say, you don't got to talk to me like that, but we're co-hosting this event, so I'll do that. And I sit down, and he wheels in a TV, and attached to the TV is a VCR. Now, a VCR is this little thing. You put a plastic thing in it, and it plays. You know, it's crazy. And he came out and he put a tape in the VCR, and it was a grainy tape. You couldn't really make out what was on the tape, but the tape started to play, and it looked like some kids were running around in a circle. And I remember looking to my left and my right and wondering, you know, this is a weird way to start a party. And I saw some kids running around. I thought this was a little bit weird, and they were all wearing orange, and I didn't know what was happening, and they continued to run around, and one of the kids fell to the ground. And it was a grainy video. I couldn't really make out what was happening. There was no sound in the video, and the guards came, and one of the guards came and picked up the little kid, and without any warning, they began to just beat on him. Just beat on him. Just pound on him. And I didn't know what was going on. I couldn't really figure out what was happening, and I look around, and people have their mouths open, and they just begin beating them. They don't stop beating them. It's grown men, and they're just beating what is this limp little kid, and he goes limp, and I see a white woman with all white hair with a white onesie on, and she comes out and she has her hands on her hip, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, maybe she's going to make this stop, and she runs off of the screen, and there's no sound on it, and I thought it was a happy hour, but she came in and she came back, and she gave the guard something, and he came over and he went over to the little kid, and he picked him up, and he put his hand over his face, and the kid began to flail, and then he fell down to the ground. And I didn't know it, but I had been invited into a room where a mentor of mine showed me a videotape, a closed caption videotape of a young man named Martin Lee Anderson. He was 14 years old. He was beaten to death by prison guards a week after he had arrived in the boot camp. He had stolen his grandmother's car. And his grandmother wanted her car back, and she called the police, and he was arrested. And when he went before the judge, she begged not to send her grandson to jail. Please don't send him to jail. Please have mercy on him. Send him to a boot camp. He'll be safer there. And a week later, he was beaten as he ran around in the yard, refused allegedly to continue to run, and they beat him. And the guards, in a moment of panic, took an ammonia tablet to revive his almost lifeless body and put it in his nose and suffocated him to death. And this was 2005, and I know that by now we can scroll up and down our timelines and we can see a baby face down on a distant beach and just keep on scrolling, or we can go to World Star and see a group of kids beating the shit out of each other and just keep on scrolling, or we can see a kid get murdered by the police and we can just keep on scrolling. But this is 2005. When I watched this video, it dramatically changed my life. And I had grown up in the murder capital, and I had done everything that I was supposed to do, and I was a good business student who wanted to do major business, and I joined student government, and I was incredibly popular, and I was the person who didn't used to get invited to parties. Now I was throwing the parties, and I had everything that I wanted. I was a big fish in a small pond. I had gone to college. I didn't mess up, and I saw this young man be murdered. And my mentor looked at me and he said, you know, I don't know why people listen to you. I don't know why you're so popular, but you all are going to have to do something about this. Because they've already determined that he didn't die from being beaten by the guards or suffocated by ammonia tablets. He died because of sickle cell anemia. Oh, God. They had said that his cells began to spontaneously sickle and he had died from unnatural causes, but that's the type of thing that happens in Florida every single day. I tell you all this story because it is the story of me. I'm no different than any one of you all. I'm no more special than any one of you all. I'm no more smart than any of you all. I did regular things. I did what I was supposed to do. I went to college. I had fun. And I watched a young man be murdered. In New York, if you ride the subway or you go anywhere on a train station or any public place, they have signs that say, if you see something, say something. And that is what we did. We organized and we were able to get the boot camp closed and the guards arrested and the sheriff over the boot camp arrested. We went back to our regular lives. I ran for student body president. I was on the board of trustees. The parties grew bigger. My influence grew wider. And 6 months later, all of the guards were acquitted. They reopened the boot camp and changed the name. And that sheriff got another job in another place doing less but making more money. I learned a crucial lesson at that time, that if we're going to do this, we've got to do it and be committed to it for the rest of our lives. I want you all to know that for me, from my personal experience, I didn't come to the movement because I read Marx or Hegel or even Fanon, or any of the great thinkers that we have on the left. I came to the movement because I grew up on the south side of Chicago and saw people talk to my mother and my father, who were the smartest people that I know, like they were nothing. And look at us like we were dirty and we were filthy. That's why I'm a part of the movement. I'm a part of the movement because I saw a young man be murdered. And I knew that we had to do something about it. I didn't come to the movement with my head. I came to the movement with my heart. My feet followed and my mind met us at the meeting. And that's why I'm here. That is the moment that we are in. I didn't know Martin Lee Anderson. I didn't know his family, but I grew to know him, and I grew to know that there are thousands of other Martin Lee Andersons or Martina Andersons, or people who are unseen, women who are trafficked across the country, children who are not living to the best of their abilities or don't have the resources to get what they need. Families are struggling every single day. And that is the meaning of our movement. Solidarity forever. There used to be a time that when you had a debt, you would show up before a judge, and the judge would decide what to do with that debt. And if you couldn't pay it, someone could stand up and say, I will take on that debt with you. And that was the original meaning of solidarity. It didn't mean allyship. It didn't mean sidekickship. It didn't mean you just call me when you need me and I'll be there. It meant that this burden was felt by me as well. This debt that you have is felt by me as well. And that is the true heart and soul of our movement. And that is why I'm here. There's a reason that I've committed the greater part of my adult life to being a part of organization. You all may see me as a leader, but I am a highly accomplished follower. I follow some incredible people. I've been a part of incredible organizations with women, with unseen people who have led, who have developed a strategy, who showed up early and didn't leave until late, if they left. And that is what our movement is about. That is the movement that calls each and every one of us into service today. That is me, that is us. This is the story of us. We are gathered today in an almost unprecedented moment. On one side, there are those that feed on hate, those that have decided that division will be the story of our lives on this earth. On the other are those that tell us that our vision is too ambitious, that the crumbs of incrementalism, the leftovers of little reforms will be the story of us. But we are here today because we believe that a different world is possible and a different America is necessary for it to be born. We are here today because we have been here for generations fighting to do more than just survive. We are here today because we believe in another way, not because we imagine it, but because we've seen it. We've seen the shackles loosed on the arms and legs of Africans in revolt. We've seen stone walls come crumbling down in the quaking of LGBTQIA comrades. We've seen domestic workers and trash men, day laborers and farmhands. We've seen students and Combahee River collectives. We've seen American Indians and Chicano movements rise up and declare that our lives have meaning, that suffrage must be ours and we will fight for it. We are here today because we are an unstoppable force against a seemingly immovable object. As I look out today, I see sisters and brothers. I see the past and the present stewards of this land. I see the great-grandchildren of the great builders of this country. I see a moment where we're here to take on the fight of our lives. Our nations, our oceans, and our temperatures are rising. Gun violence is rising. Unemployment is rising. Healthcare prices are rising. The number of our people dead or deported or in detention centers are rising. Homelessness rises. Overdoses rise. The rent is rising. And today, as we sit in here, 2020 is at our door. She carries with her a new decade already born but yet to be seen. As she knocks, she wonders if the horrors of the past will greet her. She wonders if she will be okay. She wonders if she will be turned away. She knocks and she wonders who will answer the door. 2020 is waiting and listening. She places her ear to the door. She expects to hear hateful words and mindless chatter and arguing and lies and dog whistles and empty promises and excuses. But imagine, if you will, with me, that instead of any of that, she sees us. Imagine her peeking through the blinds and seeing each and every one of us. Imagine the joy on her face as the sound of our great movement cuddles her ear, marches along her arms, and moves to her feet. Imagine with me that 2020 smiles as we open the door and she collapses in our embrace. Because there's universal health care in this house. There's free college in this house. There's freedom from brutality and prison in this house. There's love in this house. There are reunited families in this house. There is a place where you can see Mother Nature in this house. There is community in this house. There is power in this house. Says hello somebody. What we are building today is going to shock the very foundations of this world. Marcus Garvey tells us that we have a beautiful history, but the one we will create in the future will astonish the world. We have a beautiful history, but the one we will create in the future will astonish the world. I am glad to be here with you all in this moment. The great prophet Aubrey Graham said, "What a time to be alive." I remember as a child, I would watch black and white videos. I would watch in the 20s as laborers rose up under the threat of mobsters and being beaten against the empire. And I would say I wanted to be alive in the 20s. I remember watching over